What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Steelers Breakdown podcast. Nick Faribault here with you guys. Working mini camps this week, so big time week for the Steelers. We'll have content there, but we're continuing our guest spotlights here as we continue kind of learning about some of the Steelers draft picks. I've got my good friend Alex Katson coming here. Alex covers Washington, so we're going to talk about Carson Bruner today. But first, Alex, how are you doing, man?
Doing great, dude. Happy to be on with you. It's been a couple months since I've seen you, so good to see you, and happy to talk about Carson.
Yeah, me and Alex had a good old time at the good old time at the Combine, Senior Bowl this year. But it has been a few months already. It's been 2 months. That's crazy to me. Time flies.
Yeah, right.
Like, geez, man. If you have watched the channel for a while, you know Alex is on here way back when to preview the Chargers game. He also covers the Chargers. So really, really good stuff, Alex. You also do this great spreadsheet of the pro days and breaking down all the kind of numbers that you get, transactions, et cetera, et cetera. He is so official. Teams in the league use his stuff. So, Alex, great at his stuff. So just wanted to lay the red carpet out to you to showcase just how good Alex is. But Alex, you've been around the Washington football program here for a while, and you know Mark Bruner. He's obviously a Steelers area scout, former Steelers tight end. I don't think if you know the Steelers, it is not a surprise whatsoever that Carson ends up being a Steeler. It's very simple for them. A lot of people have actually criticized his pick for that connection, just because it's become such a Steelers thing, of course. But talk to me about Carson, the type of player they're getting, and more importantly, the leader they're getting off the field since he's a seventh round pick.
Yeah, Carson is a kid who in the era of college football and the way that everything is starting to go, where the transfer portal is wide open and NIL, convinces guys to leave schools all the time. Carson is one of those dudes that did it the quote unquote right way, I guess, if you want to call it that, right? Where he stayed at Washington for 5 years. This is it's the only school he ever played for. He grew up a Washington fan. He stayed at Washington the whole time. His dad went to Washington. He's a Washington man through and through and through and through. And he waited his turn. He wasn't a full-time starter until this past season in 2024. He was waiting behind couple of guys that are in the NFL now, whether it was Edifuano Focio, who's with the Bills, was a fifth round pick last year, or Jackson Sermon was a guy who's kind of hung around with the Jets a little bit, was at Washington before he went to Cal for his last season last year. So Carson has really kind of waited his turn and really like took a huge step forward this season as a starter, but also was a captain this year. Is one of those like ultimate culture guys. He's a super humble dude, super hardworking guy. Like he's one of the best people that I've encountered on this beat in my time covering the team. And really, like, especially for a seventh round pick, right? The difference is always going to be on special teams. And Carson is going to be a ace on special teams. I can tell you that right away. He did it for 3 years while he was at Washington. There was at least one play a game where you would watch Carson fly down the field on kickoff, completely wipe out a kickoff returner, and you didn't even have to know, like you didn't even have to see the number to know that it was Carson. Like everyone knew it was Carson. It was Carson every time making that play. And so for him to get his opportunity as a starter in 2024 and really take a huge step forward, had a fantastic season this season, was named Big Ten Player, Defensive Player of the Week once, led the team in tackles, led the team in interceptions, for a Washington defense that was pretty good under Steve Belichick, the defensive coordinator last season. He's certainly worthy of being drafted, and I think he's a better athlete than people give him credit for. And I think that there is a path for him to become like a starting caliber linebacker in this league, I think.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, listen, coming into this draft, I don't think anyone had the Steelers taking a linebacker. If it wasn't Bruner, of course. This is interesting, to me. You talk about the starting upside of Carson Bruner. I've been trying to tell people over the past week, I like this pick a lot more than people do. I think people see the name and they say, oh, this is, nepotism and all of that. And I understand it
Yeah,
because the Steelers have done this before. Connor Hayward, for example, they drafted Cam's brother. They bring in the Herbig brothers. The Steelers bring in brothers all the time. They have this
sure.
family thing that they do. So I understand why people are kind of up in arms about this. But what about Carson's game to you stood out this year as a linebacker that showcases potential ability to be a starter in this league? versus just the special teamer. Because the Steelers have depth linebackers that can be special teamers. They have Mark Robinson, who's been a special teamer, a really good one for them for 3 years now. Malik Harrison's going to come over from the Ravens and do that as well. But what about Bruner as a seventh round pick has the potential to be that steal of a starting linebacker that we see on day three? It feels like every year we see one or two of these guys pop out and become starting linebackers.
Yeah. Yeah. First off, I do want to just say, like, as far as the nepotism stuff goes, I actually had the opportunity to email back and forth a little bit with Mark, his dad, who's the scout for the Steelers. And he told me that they had no idea that the Steelers were going to take him. They didn't tell them ahead of time. Mark was at home with Carson. He flew out on Friday to go be with Carson for day three of the draft. They had no clue. No one told them. And so Mark was just as surprised as everyone else was when they actually took him. But he said he obviously he's thrilled being Carson's dad and everything. But yeah, I think as far as pure linebacker play goes, right? I think like the thing that stands out the most to me with Carson is just the awareness of everything on the field. There's a interview that I did with him at the Shrine Bowl that you guys can go read on Huskies Wire over on the Washington site that I cover, where we talk through an interception that he had against USC. And he basically says, it's our standard cover three look. I have the middle zone, middle shallow zone. I'm reading the quarterback's eyes. I'm seeing this. I'm seeing this. I'm seeing him go through all these reads, and I know that the dig is coming behind me because I know that that's the play. And so I just take a few steps back, and the ball comes right to me, basically, essentially, right? Like I'm simplifying it a little bit, but like those sorts of plays are ones that you don't necessarily see college linebackers making in coverage a ton, right? And again, like I mentioned, he tied for the lead technically, but tied for the lead on Washington's team with 3 interceptions last season. Obviously, three interceptions is not a lot, but it's also like for a linebacker, 3 interceptions, especially in college, is an indicator that like this kid's awareness and his football IQ is at a level that like makes up a little bit for the fact that he's not like a truly elite athlete, right? And even if you go and look at his testing from this season, like he tested a lot better than people were expecting. And he told me at the Shrine Bowl that was one of the things that he wanted to go out and prove during his pre-draft circuits. He wanted to prove that he's a better athlete than people thought he was. And he goes out and he runs in the 4.4s, 4.5s. And, suddenly everyone is like, oh, wow, I didn't think he could run like that. Right. And so, you combine like, I think he has adequate athleticism for the NFL in terms of the linebacker position. You combine that with the way that his brain works and his instincts and his awareness of everyone on the field. Like he's very much someone that knows exactly where all 11 guys on the defense are supposed to be on any given play. And when you have a guy like that at middle linebacker, you're able to kind of like that guy is able to cover for other people's mistakes because he knows where the gaps are going to be. He knows if a guy is, missing an assignment or something like that. And so I think that provides a lot of potential for a steal, like you mentioned with this pick.
Yeah, I mean, I listen. I like Bruner's tape. You kind of talked to me about this at the combine a little bit, actually, about how he was probably better than people thought he was, and I thought he was on tape. And of course, the Steelers get him. I wanted to kind of ask you because I ask everyone this that comes on here, the weaknesses of Carson's game and why he was a seventh rounder in the first place. We've talked through this with Harmon, Sawyer, and Howard already, but I want to get your kind of view on Bruner and kind of where the limitations of his game are, and if he doesn't become that star, what traits do you see holding him back, potentially from reaching that ceiling?
Yeah, I think obviously like the 1 year production only is going to be something that kind of drives him down boards a little bit. Like a lot of times NFL teams want to see you do it more consistently than that rather than sort of break out as a fifth year senior where you're a little bit older, going up against guys that might be 19, 20 years old. And so I think that certainly had a part to play. And then, like for as much as I've talked up his athleticism, right? Like I said, I think he's still just like an adequate athlete for the NFL level. He's not a great athlete by any means. I think his RAS ended up somewhere in the sevens, if I remember right. Um, and then, I think that there's probably some development left for him to go in terms of like deconstructing blocks in the run game. He's not necessarily like a stud run defender right now that's going to be able to stack and shed a block and get off a guy and fill a gap right away, right? Like he's a lot more of sort of a finesse coverage linebacker at this stage. And so I do think that like, if he's going to be held back by anything, it's probably just going to be, like his ability to be on the field for all 3 downs, right? Because right now, I think that if he were to play a role defensively, it would kind of have to be more as like a third down sub package kind of linebacker that comes in as more of a coverage guy. But then with the athleticism and everything, it's like, is his instincts and everything enough to make up for, the drop off in athleticism that you get from putting a guy that you would normally have on the field out there? And so I think that the if he can work through some of that and he can, work through some of the run game stuff, I think that there's a path for him. But certainly, like if he's going to be held back by anything, I think it's probably that.
Yeah, I mean the Steelers have a pretty good, at least clogged up linebacker room right now. Queen and Wilson are your starters. Harrison's your rundown guy. Holcomb's like your do it all. So very
Right.
unlikely chance Bruner sees the field unless this whole room gets absolutely murdered by injuries this year,
Yeah.
which has happened before. So 2023, if you remember that, the Steelers lost all three of the
Yeah.
starting linebackers for significant portions of the year. So it's not out of the realm of possibility, but don't expect it. But maybe down the line, we could see Carson Bruner get there. You mentioned Mark kind of not knowing it. It was interesting. Carson said they had it at their cabin, and he was sitting on the same couch Mark was drafted in by the Steelers 30 years earlier. Just crazy. It really is.
Yeah.
The Steelers have a way of doing this, having that nice storied bow tie in. But I do like the Carson Bruner pick. But Alex, since you do so much work just kind of on the NFL draft, and you were at the Shrine Bowl, you were at the Senior Bowl, you were at the Combine, you had some pro days, like you were all over the spot here. Looking at the Steelers draft, I mean, you look at Derek Harmon, Caleb Johnson, you look at Jack Sawyer, Y.A. Black, Will Howard, Carson Bruner, Dante Kent. What do you kind of think of this class as a whole? Just looking at it, and the Steelers obviously ignoring quarterback while doing this probably signals Aaron Rodgers is going to be a Steeler at this point. But kind of how do you point to this draft, and what do you like, and maybe what you don't like?
Yeah, I think the way that they've sort of continued to hammer the trenches, I think, is indicative of their consistency as a franchise, right? In terms of like the whole thing with like Tom has never had a losing season, et cetera, right? Like all of that, goes back to building a team through the trenches. We just saw this with the Eagles winning the Super Bowl. And so picking up Harmon with your first round pick is like the guy that, can be a starting 3 to 5 tech right away, kind of takes over, not necessarily exactly role wise, but takes over sort of in spirit from Cam Hayward if and when he eventually retires, right? I think that like I really like that pick. I do think that like if he had made it one pick longer, I do think that the Chargers probably would have taken Harmon if the Steelers hadn't. And so that was one where I was kind of shaking my fist at the TV as it happened because I was hoping that he would fall to 22 there. Johnson is a running back I really like. I think he fits really well with what the Steelers want to do on offense, or at least what they've signaled that they want to do on offense kind of this offseason, pivoting off Najee Harris and re-signing Jalen Warren instead. I think that kind of points to they want to do a little bit more outside zone run and get out to the hashes a little bit more. And Caleb Johnson is a great running back to do that with. I think that he's going to pair a lot better with Warren in terms of like doubling down on a strength with this offense. Jack Sawyer, I like as a kind of rotational edge guy. I do think, like the Steelers' edge room is already very crowded, right? But like you're going to have some decisions to make on that room in a couple of years here, coming up with TJ Watt is on the big extension already. Alex Highsmith is going to want a big contract if he hasn't gotten one already. Nick Herbig is a good rotational guy, so like that's planning for, maybe a year or two from now, right? Rather than like an impact guy right away. And then you mentioned, passing on quarterback, but I kind of like Will Howard. I like the Will Howard pick. I know he's already got a very large contingent of fans in the Steelers fan base after the pick was made, but I do like Howard a little bit. I thought he was talent wise capable of going a lot higher than the 6th round. And so for the Steelers to get him that low as kind of just like a flyer on a guy that could develop into something, I don't hate it at all. And, now you have a year to kind of see it's famous last words every year, but the 2026 quarterback class looks stronger. The Steelers have kind of loaded up on picks a little bit for that class. And so you can kind of evaluate your options there. But I do think that like Howard is a solid option. And even if he just ends up being, long-term backup for whoever you pick up next season. But yeah, I thought overall, I really liked the class in general. I thought they did a good job.
Yeah, I'm with you on Howard. I thought he could have been a fourth round pick very
Yeah.
easily.
Oh yeah, for sure.
I thought there was no shot he was even. I really thought, my last mock draft, I put him in there to the third round because, and I thought that was maybe a little early.
Yeah.
But I said I don't think he's going to get it to 123. Well, the quarterbacks
Right.
all fell. He ended up falling in the sixth round. I mean, that was a coup. That's a big time. To me, that's a big time win for them value wise. I did want to ask you about one guy in their undrafted free agent class. I
Yeah.
texted you about him already before this. I don't understand why he fell this far. Sebastian Castro, like, okay, what happened here? So he ran a 4.59 at the combine. He ran a 4.7 at his pro day. Weird, kind of disparity there. But
Mhm.
I mean, when you talk about this guy's tape, I mean, this does not look like a UDFA slot defender to me. Um, I mean, what do you think of Castro and kind of where he could fit in?
Yeah, I think, with the way that the NFL is moving in the last few years, and in terms of like putting more safeties in the nickel and having more guys on the back end of the secondary that move around that much, right? Like from a Chargers perspective, right? Like we just saw Derwin James make a second team All Pro at nickel corner after playing there for most of the season, even though he's traditionally thought of as a safety, right? And so a guy like Castro fits in very well with how the NFL is sort of trending. Like you mentioned, we kind of texted a little bit about his 40 times. I do think there was no injury that I know of at his pro day. I think, there's a couple of different reasons that you have that disparity. Sometimes like guys just get a bad start. It could be that like, he was weaving pretty bad on his attempts at Iowa's pro day. He might have just run the one time, like there's any number of reasons why it could have happened. I do agree, though, it is kind of strange. But taking a guy like that who has experience in the nickel, he has experience at both safety spots. I think that like that's a guy that not only is a versatile secondary defender, but he probably has the chops to make a difference on special teams as well. And it kind of reminds me situationally of a guy that the Steelers signed last year who ended up making the team and starting a bunch of games for them, Beatty Bishop out of the nickel, where like I think that the Steelers could get a similar value out of Castro if everything breaks right kind of this offseason. Obviously now Beanie kind of is still there and has that role, a little bit more locked down than the Steelers competition was last season, right? But I do think that like Castro could push him a little bit for that role while still like, he adds depth at more spots, right? And so I think that he's someone that I definitely kind of have circled from their pool as like a guy that's likely to make the 53.
Two UDFA nickels on the roster potentially. There's depth room on the safety roster after Ryan Watts' unfortunate career-ending injury as
Yeah.
well, so he could really play in as a versatile defender. Alex, thanks for coming on, man. Tell them where they can read your stuff, follow you, all that great stuff.
Yeah, best place to find me is just on Twitter at Alex Katson. Same way my name is spelled, Katson. I'm also over on Blue Sky. My handle over there is just Katson. It's Katson at Blue Sky Social. But yeah, that's probably the easiest way to find it because I'm all over the place, as Nick kind of mentioned at the top. I have a big announcement coming out next week, actually, that I'm excited about. So hope you guys join us for that new project that's coming out.
He won't plug it, but I will check out his Patreon. He has all the pro day data there. He has all the transactions data there. He has a bunch of great stuff over there. It's a great resource that you could find literally anybody. If you want to find the guy that is going to be a rookie minicamp tryout from New Hampshire, you can find it. If you want to find Travis Hunter, they're all in there. So it's really,
Right.
really great. Folks, make sure to like, comment, subscribe, turn the notification bell for more here on Steelers Breakdown. Thanks for listening, everybody.